Here, take it. You need it more than I do. He held the bottle out with both hands, cracked palms, sun-darkened knuckles, the kind of hands that told a whole life without a single word. The girl looked up at him through wet lashes, cheeks flushed from the July heat, and for a moment she didn't move. She was 26 years old, but sitting on that curb in the 94-degree Atlanta afternoon, clutching her twisted ankle and trying not to cry, she looked much younger. Lost, the way people look when something small breaks them open after something large has been held in too long. His name was Emmett Rourke, 33 years old. He had been sitting against the stone wall of the Centennial Park Pavilion since early morning, his worn canvas bag tucked between his feet, a half-finished bottle of water, his only one, resting against his thigh. He had nowhere to be. He hadn't had anywhere to be in nearly 2 years, not since the contracting company he'd worked for collapsed overnight and took his savings with it in a legal tangle he couldn't afford to fight. He'd lost his apartment 4 months after that. He was not a man without pride. That was the thing people never understood about men like Emmett. He had enormous pride. It was the pride that made asking for help feel like swallowing glass. But he could give. That he could still do. The girl, her name was Waverly Holt, had been rushing through the park when her sandal caught a raised edge of pavement. She'd gone down hard, her bag scattering, her ankle rolling beneath her. The people nearby had glanced. A few had paused. None had stopped. Emmett had crossed the path in 10 quiet steps, gathered her scattered things without being asked, and crouched beside her. "Can you put weight on it?" he'd asked. I'm not sure," she'd said, voice tight with the effort of not crying. He'd helped her to the curb, stayed beside her, and when he saw her swallow dryly, lips pressed together against the heat, he reached into his bag without thinking and held out the bottle. "Here, take it. You need it more than I do." What Emmett did not know, what he had absolutely no way of knowing, was that a dark SUV with tinted windows was idling 40 feet away at the park's service entrance. Inside it, Governor Randall Holt, 61 years old, was watching. He had been waiting for Waverly, his daughter, who'd insisted on walking through the park alone rather than being escorted, one of the small battles of independence she fought with him regularly, and one he usually lost. His security lead, a composed man named Torres, had spotted her fall on the park's exterior camera feed and notified the governor, who had told Torres to wait, that Waverly would be embarrassed by a scene, that she was fine, that they should give her a moment. And then he had watched a homeless man cross the park, collect her scattered things, help her to the curb, and give him his last bottle of water. Randall Holt had been in politics for 22 years. He had shaken 10,000 hands, delivered 1,000 speeches about community and compassion and the dignity of every citizen. He had meant most of it. But sitting in that car, watching Emmett Rourke hold out that bottle with both hands, he felt something move in him that policy language had never quite touched. He said nothing to Torres. He simply watched. Waverly drank gratefully and tried to give the bottle back. Emmett shook his head. "I'm good," he said simply. She looked at him, at the worn jacket despite the heat, the careful way he held himself, the quiet in his eyes that wasn't defeat, but something more complicated. "When did you last eat?" she asked directly. She was her father's daughter that way. She asked the thing others danced around. Emmett almost smiled. "I'm managing." "That's not what I asked." A pause. "Yesterday morning." She reached into her bag and pulled out the cafe sandwich she'd bought an hour ago and hadn't opened. She held it out. He started to shake his head and she said firmly, quietly, "Please, let somebody do something back." He took it. He ate it slowly, with the careful dignity of someone who refused to be reduced by hunger. They sat together on that curb for 20 minutes, talking about the city, about the heat, about small things that opened into larger ones. She didn't offer pity. He didn't perform gratitude. They were simply two people, briefly sharing the same patch of afternoon. When a park staff member brought a small first aid kit for her ankle, Emmett helped wrap it with steady, practiced hands. Did construction work for 8 years, he explained quietly. Got to know first aid pretty well. She looked at him. What happened? He told her, briefly, without drama. The company, the legal collapse, the apartment, the 2 years. Waverly was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You gave me your last water, knowing all of that." "You were sitting in the heat," he said, as though it were the simplest logic in the world. It wasn't a hard decision. Torres came for her 20 minutes later, professionally casual, giving nothing away. Emmett helped her stand, made sure her ankle held, handed back her bag. "Thank you, Emmett," she said. He nodded. "Take care of that ankle." He turned and walked back toward the pavilion wall. He didn't see her look back at him twice. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at the shelter on Piedmont Avenue where Emmett had recently secured a bed. It was from the Governor's Office of Workforce Reintegration, a program, the letter explained, that connected skilled tradespeople who had experienced economic hardship with contracted infrastructure projects. His name had been referred by a private source. An interview was scheduled for the following Thursday.
Emmett read the letter 4 times. He had no way of connecting it to a park bench, a bottle of water, a girl with a twisted ankle. He went to the interview. His 8 years of construction experience spoke clearly. He was offered a position that Friday. What he also didn't know was that Governor Holt, the evening after the park, had called Waverly into his study and asked her quietly about the man who'd helped her. She had told him everything, not to ask for anything, just to answer honestly. Her father had listened, hands folded, and said nothing for a long time. Then he'd said, "That program has 40 open referral slots this quarter. I want them filled with people like him." He paused. "We talk about dignity in every speech I give. That man on the bench showed more of it in 10 minutes than most rooms I walk into." Emmett Rourke started work on a city bridge restoration project on a Monday morning in August, hard hat in hand, the Atlanta skyline behind him. He didn't know the full shape of what had brought him there. He knew only that he'd had a bottle of water and someone had needed it and he had given it, and that the world sometimes quietly notices the people who give from empty hands. Kindness offered without calculation is the rarest and most powerful currency there is. It doesn't always come back to you, but when it does, it comes back as something larger than you gave. That bottle of water was empty. What it started was not. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.